Hello, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are, one and all, and welcome to this special online event on Facebook and YouTube. My name is Nick Wasiliev, and I'm the author of When Men Cry, which is a new novel published by Breathe Art Holdings and distributed by Booktopia Publishing Services. And as part of the book, 10% of my earnings will be going to LIVIN, which is an amazing charity that aims to break the stigma around mental health. And this leads me on to my guest. Sam Webb is the co-founder and co-CEO, and I'm here today to chat with him about LIVIN, his crusade to change misconceptions around mental health, and some of the successes LIVIN has had in making progress in that space. Sam, welcome from beautiful California.
Nick, mate, it's a pleasure, and I appreciate the very kind, warm welcome, warm introduction, and I appreciate the work that you've done, mate, constructing the book and diverting some, profits towards LIVIN for the greater good, man. Much love and much respect to that, and thanks for all the work that you do, man. I'm looking forward to having a chat with you today.
It's an absolute pleasure, and I'm so glad to have you here for us to talk about this. So for all of our viewers who aren't potentially familiar with LIVIN and what LIVIN does, can you kind of explain the origins of this charity?
Absolutely, man. And I think it really is the driving force behind everything that we do, why we do it, why we're doing what we say we do, and I guess why we're building these communities all around the world today. And it all started in 2013, a night of September 15, 2013, to be exact. We lost a very dear friend. His name was Dwayne Lally, to suicide. Dwayne suffered with bipolar and depression for a number of years, and like a lot of young men, he was 24, 25 at that stage. He hid the pain extremely well. Didn't really tell too many people about it, and the stigma kept him quiet. Outside looking in, Dwayne had it all, man. He was life of the party, very charismatic, just a great friend. And he had an amazing, huge network of people in his life that would have done anything for him had he have seen, the aftermath. And, I was very fortunate and unfortunate to have been with Dwayne the night that he passed away. And, I remember having, some very vivid conversations with Dwayne around, his well-being, his mental health challenges. And, I was so caught off guard that night. I didn't see half the stuff coming at me with what he explained and how he shared it. And I was very surprised, when Dwayne had told me that he'd tried to take his life before, and that this is how bad his bipolar and depression was. And I mean, as a friend, as a good friend, I mean, I thought I had the answers to what Dwayne was reaching out for, and I thought I listened as best as I possibly could have. And Dwayne being Dwayne, the life of the party, he sucked it up and hit it well and reassured me, Sam, I'm fine, man. These were the last two words that Dwayne had said to me. And, unbeknownst at the time, I didn't know that was going to be the last time that I saw Dwayne alive. Dwayne went on to take his life, not long after that conversation. And, mate, I can tell you right now, the impact that evening had on an unquantifiable amount of people from so many different communities right around Australia was life-changing. And Casey is Dwayne's best mate, and they myself, Case, and with the love and acceptance from Dwayne's family, we created LIVIN, and we use everything that we do with LIVIN around breaking the stigma around mental health, so that young people aren't taking their life, and there are better options out there to get help and get support and get back on track. Because I can, look back now, and I look back often, as to why we're doing what we do. And, did Dwayne want to take his own life? No. Did he probably want to end the pain? Yes. We want to try and stop that from happening to anyone else that's going through a similar situation right now. And that's all we can do. And we're very, very grateful for all the support and help that we get from all around the world, especially people like yourself. And LIVIN wouldn't be LIVIN without that love and support. So thank you.
It's amazing the stuff that you've been doing. Keeping watch, because I only became of your story recently. So I mean, I was playing at Drummoyne Rugby Club, and Drummoyne does a whole amount of stuff with LIVIN. And when we actually did this whole day where we focused around mental health and looking after people in the club, because I know Drummoyne has had a couple of players as well who have been lost to suicide. I've lost friends to suicide, male and female, and it's just the effect that it has is incredible. It changes your life. It changes everything. It changes your perspectives on the value that life actually is and how precious and amazing it is.
Yeah, mate. Mate, so very true. You summed it up exactly, perfectly. And while we sit here right now, you and I, Nick, having this conversation, there are people out there that are, going through the very thick of things and challenges and struggles in their own life, and people are dying by suicide at an alarming rate. And we've got to do more to stop that from happening, and hence why we're on this call having this conversation right now, and so that we can stop other people going down that same path that friends like yourself, friends of yours, friends of mine that have been down, and they've taken that route and we can't bring them back. So we've got to do what we can to make a difference. And while we're on the note of Drummoyne, mate, big love. I mean, Drummoyne has been a huge supporter of LIVIN over the years. I'm family friends with Mick Hahn. Obviously they lost their dear son PJ a few years ago, and mate, that Drummoyne community has rallied around like I could never imagine, man. The support that comes out of that community is, it's unbelievable.
It is. It's amazing.
Unbelievable, man. Yeah. It really is. So thank you for everything that you guys are doing in that community to make a real lasting impact.
Yeah, it's great, and it's so good to be supportive, and particularly when you go out there and you play with the actual jersey on is such an amazing feeling. Whether you win or lose, it reiterates what's important. From my own perspective of having played there, and how good it makes you feel to actually be part of something. So, looking at the actual goals of LIVIN, when you kind of sat down and said, "What do we want to do?" What were kind of the main things you were like, okay, these are the things we want to look at. These are the things we want to tackle. These are the problems.
Well, we realised, man, after Dwayne had passed away that, this issue, we realised after doing our own homework and research, the issue was very common. It was a lot more common than we first thought. And we understood, and having gone through my own mental health journey prior, I'd known that there was a lot of amazing resources out there. There was a lot of great help, and there was a lot of help out there, and service providers that were willing to support you in any which way possible. But one thing we realised going through this, I guess, journey together, Casey and myself, we realised that there was nothing that was kind of cool out there that was sort of breaking those barriers down in a way that was relatable, that wasn't confronting, that was kind of like, it was acceptable. We were normalising something that wasn't really spoken about. And there's just so many amazing organisations out there to this day that are helping break the stigma and all that sort of stuff, which is amazing. But we really wanted to, give back what we didn't have growing up, and that was like education programs, in school. Like when I went to high school and junior school, and even in my workplace, I never had someone telling me what mental illness was, what was mental ill health, what was, a warning sign. How could you look after a friend or a family member or someone that might be struggling? So I think that's I guess the niche as to where LIVIN wanted to position itself, and we wanted to be the leaders in that brand-led movement and tie everything back to the why we exist. And it's because of Dwayne, and we want to end the stigma around mental health through cool, innovative, relatable stuff that young men like you and I would relate to. Things like merch, events, fundraisers, cool stuff, education programs in schools that are innovative, and that's what we want to do.
Yeah, I love some of the creative things that you've been doing in terms of, going to schools, chatting with people, doing workshops and stuff, but even down to the merch, just the idea of making mental health in all capacities just relatable in all those ways. A good question here, I know it's a really hard question to ask because mental health is so complicated. It's like it's a whole other aspect of your health and your well-being. What does a healthy relationship with your mental health look like to you?
Yeah, I think that's a very good question, Nick, and I think it's probably gonna change for everyone, because I don't think no one's the same. We're all very unique in our own ways. But I think there are a lot of similarities. And, mental health challenges, mental illnesses, they're very complex. And for the most part, making that decision to die by suicide and to take your own life doesn't generally come just from one thing in your life or one thing that feels like it's too much. It's generally, It's generally like a combination of a lot of things that are very complex. And I think to counteract that and to put yourself in a really good mental health position, I'd like to think that you'd want to self-care, prioritize your self-care routine. Try putting yourself first, practicing what you preach. If you get there, going to get fit at the gym and focus on your physical health and what you look like, let's start focusing on our mental health and what we act like and how we perform day to day, because it only helps our relationships. It only helps ourselves. And, self-care will be different between you and myself. I run, I read, I try and meditate these days because I've had to, look at other strategies to help me going through certain difficult times. Taking time out, switching off, doing the things that I enjoy, whether that's taking a walk, doing art, acting. Every single person's on their own journey. But I think what mental health really looks like to all of us is different. But the one thing that I must make clear is we all have mental health. We actually all have mental health, and we all sit on a mental health continuum. Think of it like, 0 all the way to 10. 0 being maybe you're mentally unwell or you're struggling, and 10's you're thriving. And we all go up and down that, mental health continuum, regularly. But it's being able to adapt and have those skills necessary to know where you are on the continuum, so that if you are at a 0 or a 1, you know how to reach out and ask for help when you need it, and identifying that within yourself.
Yeah, I agree. And I think kind of leading on from that point that you talk about, a lot of it is around just giving yourself the permission and the ability to self-care. Because so many people, they're often, you're always putting pressure on yourself, and you're always forcing yourself to be at a certain standard that you always necessarily can't be. I myself struggle from that hugely, and that's been a lot of the basis for a lot of my own mental health issues, like just always putting pressure on yourself and never giving yourself that time to relax and reflect and actually give yourself that self-care time. And I completely agree. It's so important in terms of when you're looking after your mental health to actually allow for that time to just stop and reflect. And when you are not okay, admitting to yourself that you are not okay, which can often be the hardest part.
Mate, I couldn't agree with you more. I think the self-awareness part is a big part of feeling whether you're okay or you're struggling. I think the more self-aware you are and the more able you are to check in with yourself about how you're feeling, whether it's good or bad, the more you're able to, sit there and say, okay, I'm not doing too well now. I need to get help. Why? Because these are the triggers that are in my life. These are the things that aren't actually working for me right now. And it's because I'm self-aware. So I always practice self-care as a number one form of looking after myself. And it's not being selfish. It's not putting other people first. It's just that you're going to show up and be better for everyone else when you're better for yourself. And that's just the end of story.
Yeah, absolutely. I know that like a lot of the basis for a lot of the for my book personally, a big discussion around it was around men's mental health, but also women's mental health, how they have to how both of them actually kind of struggle with these particular issues. What are men in your experience fronting up to these problems? Because from my personal experience, I've often found it quite difficult to be open and honest and admit to myself, hey, I'm not feeling okay at the moment.
Mate, it really is. It depends again on the culture. It depends on the group of people that you're with and who you're with at the present time. You find people are more vulnerable and more open and more able to share how they feel if they're in a very safe space with other safe, like-minded individuals who maybe have shared before in the past. So they've already created that safe space for you then to reach out and ask for help. But I think a big barrier that men in particular face and society faces in general is the self-stigma and the social stigma. And I think that's very, very important to know the difference between stigmatizing yourself towards challenges in your own life and thinking, oh, I'm a burden, I'm not good enough, people are going to think I'm weak, versus what you think society believe around mental health challenges. And at the end of the day, self-stigma is one of the major causes why people aren't seeking help. And I think we need to stop and recognize that within ourselves, that we must take that confidence to reach out, give ourselves the love and the time and the nurturing that it deserves to reach out and get the help that we need to get back on track so that we can start living again.
Mm. How does it compare as well for women as well? Because I know women deal with a whole bunch of other mental health issues and stigmas of their own, as impacted by societal expectations, or if they're a lot of partners I know, they might have a partner who's suffering significantly from mental health, and as a result, their mental health is affected as well. How does it compare? What are some of the things that they deal with too? Is it similar in some ways and different in others?
Mate, again, and I'm not a female, so I can't speak from my own experiences. But what I can speak from is I can speak from what I observe and what I know based on the research that I've done in the past. But one thing you find with females in particular, they're generally more open to talking about their emotions and feelings because it's not self-sabotaging for the most part. Because when we're born, especially in Australia, we're generally brought up with a culture of mateship and toxic masculinity, right?
Yes.
So we're taught to be the breadwinners. We're taught to be the strong ones. We're taught to never cry. We're taught as a young kid, why are you crying? Suck it up. Get over it.
Yeah.
Whereas it's always been acceptable for females or women to be able to, break down and show their vulnerability. So therefore, they're going to be more open to sharing that. And they're probably going to be more because of the way they've been brought up and the culture and the expectations, they're able to be more educated and more open to having those conversations from a way of compassion and empathy. Whereas males, whenever we're shown something that's confronting or vulnerable, if we don't really want to accept and acknowledge that, we sort of, lock up and we run away, or we try and mask it with something that's going to be very masculine and very tough and staunch. And that's not how the future is going to be for male mental health and masculinity. And I think it needs to change across the board. And I think it will. And I think it is.
Yeah, it's interesting to me, particularly because I've been looking at this space for a while. A lot of the high-profile people who are talking about these mental health issues are women, are really high, strong, powerful women. And it's so interesting to me that particularly within the subject of men's mental health, a lot of men are really, really find it so difficult to actually speak and just be prepared to say I'm not okay and I'm struggling with these issues. And more often than not, after they've let them, it's so in every situation, after they let these feelings out and let them know how they're feeling, they speak and you listen, or they're just like, I should have done this ages ago, years ago. It's like a dam's burst and suddenly everything makes sense again. Having the actual chance to just give yourself that time to allow yourself to recover, but also trusting other people who love you to be able to understand you.
Mate, it's so true and it's often the hardest step though to take. So it's like a double-edged sword. In the moment, we sometimes can rationalize and we think, okay, that does seem like the right thing to do to be able to talk about it. But when you're in the throes of a mental health challenge and you're around a whole bunch of mates who probably don't speak up and it's not part of that normal culture, you generally bury it and you carry on like nothing's happened and you generally hide it at all costs. So what I want to challenge people to do and what we challenge people to do at LIVIN, and it's through our mantra, it ain't weak to speak, is try and become the safest person in the room. Because if as a mate, Nick, you're sitting there amongst a whole bunch of, of your friends in an event or a party or wherever it is, and you're open and you're comfortable with your own vulnerabilities around your own mental health journey and your own challenges, chances are you've just created a really safe space for people. And although they may not talk about their challenges directly with you then, they know that, hey, Nick's a safe guy. He's shared with me how he's felt. So it's going to give me more feelings of confidence and security when I do share my challenge, whether it is with Nick or with someone else in the group who also accepts this conversation. And I think that goes a long way. So be the safest person in the room. I challenge you.
Yeah, exactly. We'll talk a little bit about in relation to my book specifically, because the book basically follows these four characters and how when one of them begins exhibiting signs of depression, they go out on a night out. This guy, he's obsessed with the gambling, he's obsessed with the poker chips, he's obsessed with this and this and this. And anytime anyone tries to say to him, hey, calm down or relax, he suddenly gets very defensive, very upset, as though it's this little haven of escape for him. And the other three guys in this group respond very differently. One's kind of just observing and not sure what to do. Another is taking that, traditional toxic masculinity approach of sweeping it under the carpet. He'll be right. He's fine. He's just having a night. And another guy is going, this is a problem. We need to do something about this, but focusing specifically on the gambling part. Hey, you need to stop gambling, rather than going deeper and asking the question, why is he acting like this? Which I think is a big part of that. And it's come from so many, nights out with friends, observing people going out, talking to friends about it. And it's just such a important, it was just a moment in this relationship that I'd seen play out, not just for me, but with other friends in my relationship, my background. Do you still see, it feels like it's part of you've talked about in Australia, this whole idea of toxic masculinity and connection. These responses, every person who I've talked to about this have been like, I see this happening all the time. This is the relationship and the world and the environment that we're in, particularly the character who just kind of sweeps it under the carpet and goes, oh, he'll be right. He doesn't. This is how it is. How do you, when you are in situations like this, obviously it takes a long time for these characters to actually address it the right way. When you're in a situation like that, how do you respond? How do you tackle that particular issue? If you're seeing someone who is kind of sweeping it under the carpet a little bit, or taking that approach that we see so often.
Yeah, I think it's, and again, this answer doesn't come from a place, again, and I'll make this very clear. I'm not a mental health professional by any means. Yes. I am a student of life, Nick, and I've learned through firsthand experiences the devastating impacts that suicide has and mental illnesses have on people from all walks of life, from a lot of walks of life. And, through the years of research and understanding and mentoring, I feel I'm very confident to answer these questions, hence why I'm about to. But I think, first and foremost, we must call out what we see. Oftentimes as men and friends, and we don't like to have those hard-hitting conversations because we don't want to rustle someone's feathers up, or we don't want to have that uncomfortable conversation because we don't know how we will react or how the other person will react. But if you see a friend or a family member or someone in your group that's just not being themselves and something's just not right, oftentimes your instincts are pretty spot on, so call it out. Like, for example, Nick, I noticed that you haven't sort of been yourself lately. Is there something that is bothering you, or is there something that you're struggling with that maybe I could help with? You might say no, and I would say, okay, no worries, because obviously you can't make someone do anything per se, but you can certainly give them options so that when they are ready, they can reach out and ask for help. And you can't almost say this slow enough, and you certainly can't almost say it fast enough. But just letting someone know, a friend, okay, no worries. You said you're okay. I just want you to know, Nick, that, if there is anything bothering you, I'm here to chat, and I'm here whenever you are ready as a friend, not as a mate or as a throwaway. Look, no worries, mate. I'll be here whenever you're ready. Just give me a call. That's different than saying, okay, thank you very much for sharing. I appreciate it. But I want you to know, as a friend, I'm here for you whenever you are ready. That is so powerful, man. Than saying to someone, no worries, Nick. I'll hit you up next week. I'll drop you a text. It's completely different. It's completely it's completely bilaterally different. So it's important with the right intentions, that at the very bare minimum you can sit there and you can listen to someone without any judgment and just offer your support whenever they are ready. And if they don't know what to do, don't know how to seek help, don't know where to go, that's where you can come in as a friend from time to time, and you can offer up options, support options. If I come with you to see a psych, would it make you feel more comfortable? Here's a cool little blog that I did with Sam the other day on a video. Have a look at this. This might help you open up. All this stuff, very helpful stuff.
It's giving that space to it. It's going back to that whole idea of the safe space and that safe environment that you talk about a lot. The whole idea and the whole notion of allowing that person to feel safe, talking to you and being honest about, hey, I'm not feeling okay, or that entire space and environment. Yeah.
Mate, that's all it's about. And I think it doesn't have to be complex. It's got to be very simple.
Yeah. One of the things I did, one of the things I did want to ask you a little bit about, particularly with when you're dealing with a charity or something around something as important as mental health, it's always really good in terms of actual representation to get it right. So I myself had to do a lot of research, hear a lot of perspectives, see what other particular pieces of art, whether it be film or books, did around the actual representation of mental health, and that it's incredibly important to get it right. Because if you don't, then the actual implications could be potentially quite bad for someone who, for example, might be reading this book or watching your film or whatever and looking and going, hey, this representation of mental health is not helpful or meaningful or constructive or encouraging me to come out. In terms of your LIVIN's main goal of really breaking stigma around mental health, how the actual aspect of doing it in a way that is relatable but also allows people to connect, what is that tightrope like for you? Because it was definitely difficult for me putting the book together.
Yeah, I think it's just trying to listen to what people are after and trying to stay relatable in a way that's, understanding the community, understanding who you're dealing with. And I think research and being connected to wonderful communities, you realize what people are actually after and what they're yearning for and what they really need. And I think if you can adapt to that and stay agile and stay relatable, but most importantly, Nick, you want to stay true to the reasons as to why you're doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
And everything that we do is, started from a friend, from losing a friend who was dearly loved by many, many people. And this happens on a daily basis, man. We can't underestimate that. This happens on a daily basis. We won't underestimate it, and we're going to keep pushing forward.
So I know I could chat to you all day about this, but I know that you're a super busy bloke. You've got, you've got a lot of stuff going on with LIVIN. You're seeing a lot of people, everything like that. So kind of as a last question I want to ask is just, if you are in that situation and you know someone who is struggling, how can people contribute to a positive relationship with mental health? If you are in that position and you know someone who is struggling.
I think that the first things first. Remember that acknowledge that you're not a mental health professional. You're not expected to have all the answers for everything. At the bare minimum, just be a friend. What would you say to someone who's struggling right now would be the same thing that you'd like to say to yourself, even though sometimes you don't feel that. Okay, so at the very bare minimum, just sit there and listen non-judgmentally and reassure, like I said earlier, you can't say it fast enough, you can't say it slow enough, but reassuring someone that you're there for them and that you're there for them when they are ready. And whenever that is, I will be here and I'll be ready. And people can join the LIVIN movement and follow and reach out for any other tips and tools that might be able to help them on their journey, whether you're a supporter or whether you're someone that's looking for help. Please reach out at livin.org. We're all very grateful for the love and the support that we've got from over the years from so many people. And man, I can't say how grateful we are.
Yeah, it's amazing the stuff that you do, and it's really, I'm so excited to see what the next coming months and years will bring for the charity, because you're heading in the right direction, and the thing that you're talking about is so important. So that'll bring us to the end of this conversation, and I'd just like to say thank you for such a wonderful and honest conversation about this really, important topic. It's so awesome to get the chance to pick your brains. And see and about how to combat struggles around mental health, and really breaking down that, at the end of the day, your mental health is a part of you, and it's important to look after it, and there's no shame in being honest when you're not okay. So thank you so much for coming on.
Mate, thank you. Thank you for everything that you're doing. Thanks so much for your time. Thank you so much for sharing the book that you've launched, and thank you so much for putting all the effort and time into what's a very important topic. I wish you nothing but the greatest success. Thank you for this, for the support within the Des Moines community. And man, we're just very grateful for everything. So thank you. Good luck with everything. And please reach out to us, mate, if we can help with anything else.
Oh, you'll see us through that through. So for everyone watching, you can head over to livin.org if you'd like to see the great work that Sam and his team do, and also get a conversation going with the hashtag It Ain't Weak to Speak. So I've attached all of the links to LIVIN in the description box. I'm super proud to be fundraising for you guys, and you can order my book When Men Cry now from Booktopia, Angus and Robertson. We're doing an ebook, whole bunch of other stuff. And that'll be out through Breathe Art Holdings and Booktopia Publishing Services. And lastly, if you are someone who is experiencing mental illness and watching this and doing it tough at the moment, I think you're amazing. Sam thinks you're amazing. You are awesome. Do not forget it. And if you are seeking help or know someone who is seeking help, please contact Lifeline on 13 11 14. That number again, 13 11 14. So stay strong, everyone, and thanks so much for tuning in.